Here, Goebbels shows UFA executives that he is now effectively their boss. He lectures them about his vision of German film, rising to new artistic heights, suffused with the Nazi spirit.
He talks about the need to create a new film art. Film art that will rival Hollywood, but a film art that will be very specifically German. So no Jews, a lot of more or less subtle anti-Semitism, but also a general repudiation of anything that looks culturally different.
The Nazis introduce censorship as early as 1934, but this isn't enough for Goebbels. He wants influence at the very heart of the film industry, while maintaining the appearance of artistic freedom. So Goebbels encourages UFA to set up an artistic committee. Officially, its purpose is to boost German cinema into a world-leading art form, but unofficially, it acts as a proxy for Goebbels' own ideas.
It is fascinating reading the minutes of that committee, because what you see in microcosm is fascism and a totalitarian regime at work. Because you see people whose careers are on the line, they want to make money, they want the studios to be successful, and they also want themselves to be promoted. They quote Goebbels extensively, and it's by no means without conflict. There is real debate that goes on. Of course, always against the background of a regime that rules by terror.
Goebbels is determined to find the right filmmaking formula to engage cinema audiences while educating them in the Nazi way of thinking. He realizes that he needs to understand how people respond to films.
The Nazis had their own forms of market research, but specifically with films, there was ticket sales. But the other was to have observers in the audience, and they could tell if a German film was being hissed, which they sometimes were.
From the mid-1930s, the secret police are everywhere. They're going into public places, listening, reporting back on the state of public opinion. Goebbels refers to them very often in his diaries, and they do tell a fascinating story of what's going on in the cinemas.
Goebbels came rapidly to the conclusion that the key art of propaganda was to embed it in entertainment. And that is the insight, the genuinely original insight which he has. It's the propaganda of disguise.
Under Goebbels' control, German cinema is effectively nationalized, but it also flourishes. More films with better quality and popular themes draw bigger audiences and even win international acclaim.
There are exotic adventures, there are musical comedies, there are melodramas, and they target different audiences and they capture people in different ways. And it seems to me that that is really what certainly the early years of National Socialism are about. They're about laying the ground for the increasing reign of terror of the National Socialists. They're about creating consent amongst a population that is learning to live with National Socialism and that doesn't need to see images of terror. What it needs to see is that something new and good is happening.
So, cinema goers in Nazi Germany and abroad see a highly edited version of reality.
They wanted to project the feeling, the sense, the look of a modern Western country. It shouldn't look like a totalitarian dictatorship. It shouldn't feel like that to the people who lived there. It's actually wonderfully subtle as a form of mind manipulation.
Spring 1937. Hitler's House of German Art is nearly complete. The moment has come to define the new Nazi vision of art. But this is no easy task.
There have been constant arguments about what was German art. Massive arguments about should we show expressionist art or should we show more traditional 19th century German art.
The Nazi Party is split into two factions. Back to basics traditionalists like Rosenberg want conventional, figurative art, heroic people and striking landscapes. Progressives like Goebbels prefer the bold, abstract images of the Expressionists. Each side is desperate to win Hitler's personal endorsement.
Even within the Nazi Party, there were many who defended Expressionism. Both Expressionism and Expressionist artists were regarded and defended by them as being essentially German art.
Als eine urdeutsche Kunst aufgefasst und verteidigt.
But it is widely known that personally, the Führer is no fan of Expressionism.
Hitler tried to be an artist and he'd failed with his painstakingly pedantic representations of buildings and scenes. Expressionist paintings, colourful, vivid, alive, but not particularly representational. And Hitler thought, why are these people succeeding with this rubbish when I failed?
Hitler appoints a jury to choose works for the first Great German Art Exhibition. They present 800 works for his approval, but they are not to the Führer's taste.
When Adolf Hitler came to look at the first selection in the spring of 1937, he flew into a rage and tore painting after painting off the walls because they were still much too modern by his standards.
It seems only one man can decide what is allowed inside the Führer's House of German Art, Hitler himself. He fires the jury and makes a new selection just in time for the opening in July 1937.
First Great German Art Exhibition was not only to launch the building to his temple of German art, as Hitler called it, but also to put a stamp on the kind of iconography of the Nazis' imagination of the Reich. The purpose was really to inscribe Hitler's personal vision of art.
The final selection of artworks was in line with the officially approved artistic ideal. This means themes of war, glorification of man as a warrior, glorification of woman as a mother and nurturer of the German nation.
Der Frau als Mutter und Ernährerin des deutschen Volkes.
The curatorial conception of Hitler during this period would have been not necessarily about the quality of the art, about the formal aspects of it, but more on the imagery. It was just simply pure propaganda.
Hitler fills 40 rooms with nearly 900 landscapes, portraits and sculptures. The Nazi vision of art is now clear. The House of German Art is packed with strong, simple representational and naturalistic artworks, with the occasional classical pastiche. Adolf Wissel's paintings of idealized farming life hang next to Adolf Ziegler's neoclassical nudes. Weakness, disease and doubt are all banished. A superficial beauty dominates. Hitler's favorite sculptor, Arno Breker, creates muscle-bound male nudes, Aryan supermen in stone. National Socialist Germany wants art that is once again German art, and it will be an art that lasts forever, as all of the creative values of the nation will last forever.
Hitler's intent was to introduce a new imagery, a new iconography that elevated the people, that brought the vision of this wholesome society more clearly to the public. This statement of intent obviously had an extra dimension, which was the destruction of the progressive forces that were pitching a completely new vision of what modern art ought to be. Hitler was going to clean house in the domain of culture as he had done in the domain of politics.
For 4 years, a civil war has raged for the artistic soul of Germany. But when the public first step inside the House of German Art, it becomes clear that the supporters of modernism, including Joseph Goebbels, have just lost.
Consequently, after those 4 years had passed, in 1937, the definitive destructive blow against modern art was executed. And at this point, Joseph Goebbels started playing the part of an opponent of modernism, taking over leadership of the campaign of defamation.
Goebbels soon swallows his personal enthusiasm for modernism. Now he enthusiastically names and shames the art that offends the newly defined Nazi sensibility.
By special order of the Führer, a commission was sent throughout Germany's museums to confiscate offending works of art. Within a very short period of time, almost 700 artworks were seized and taken to Munich.
Works by Picasso, Cézanne, Van Gogh and Gauguin are confiscated and displayed in an exhibition of degenerate art in Munich, alongside German expressionists such as George Grosz, Ernst Kirchner, Otto Dix and Ludwig Gies. It opens in the Archaeological Institute the day after the start of Hitler's exhibition in the House of German Art, just across the road. Goebbels speaks at the opening, condemning the featured art. His cynical transformation from expressionist lover to bitter opponent of modernism does not go unnoticed. His rival, the arch-traditionalist Alfred Rosenberg, happily crows about Dr. Goebbels' dissembling in his diary.
And now Dr. G was forced to speak against the incompetence in Munich when it was his representatives who had been defending them for 4 years. He behaved, as usual, as if he had been the true leader in the fight against artistic degeneration all along.
The Nazis present the degenerate art as badly as possible.
Hardly any light was allowed into these rooms, so it was basically impossible for these artworks to come across well. They were literally shown in a bad light. This criticism was increased even more by painting derogatory slogans on the walls to shape the visitor's opinion of the art.